We're going to start?
Yeah.
All right. So in the last video, we were able to read the text and the full gosho of the persecution by sword and staff. And not all of that text then is carried over into this lecture. Okay, so we got the benefit of reading the full gosho. One of the most important things I thought about this is not mentioned in this lecture. Okay? And I just wanted to bring it to everybody's attention again, because we talk about mentor and disciple constantly. Mm-hmm. And when it was first really started to be pressed, it really wasn't something that was brought forth until after the split. Okay? And so then when we started talking about mentor and disciple, a lot of people conflated that with, it's worship Daisaku Ikeda. And no, it's always the teacher and the person learning from the teacher, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the whole point. And so this, mentor, disciple, or master, disciple, or teacher, student, however you want to qualify it, it's the same process. It's somebody that's already gone through an experience that they're very sure they can qualify as truth, even though they have no other way to validate it, okay? And they ask that circumstance be taken upon as faith to advance the other individual at a faster rate than it would if they had to, figure it out on their own. Okay. And in the last week, I actually had George take a comment out by someone that I don't even know what their name is because I don't remember it and I don't care to. But I'm going to go ahead and address that now as well. The reason that I took that out, this person made the comment, but do you have to be so dogmatic? It's only NMRK. And I'm like, to me, immediately that doesn't work very well with somebody that actually knows what they're saying, because, the minute you say only NMRK, you start abbreviating Nam Myoho. Where did it ever say anywhere you could abbreviate it into, 4 letters when you're expressing? I mean, we talk about the Daimoku. This is, again, when you say it's only NMRK, to me, you're diminishing it completely, because it is the supreme teaching left by the true Buddha of, Kuan-Ganjo, for the sake of the enlightenment of all people in the latter day of the law. Now, if you go, that's only NMRK, you've got your head up your ass as far as I'm concerned, okay? And as far as me being dogmatic, I am absolutely as dogmatic as they come. I will quit being as dogmatic as I am once I read Nietzsche and not being the same way. Or President Ikeda. President Ikeda, speaks with a conviction and an assured level of understanding that could be taken as him being dogmatic. But in reality, this is trying to teach people the fundamental reality of the serious truth of what's written here. Over the many years we've been studying, I think I've pointed out many times when you can read what it says on the surface and then I explain, no, it's much deeper than that. Yes or no?
Yes.
Absolutely. Okay? So the whole concept of thinking that you can judge somebody based on the tenor of how they speak or even what they're saying without really knowing what the subject matter is, you're way ahead of yourself. And so I always encourage everybody to be very careful about slandering somebody that's trying to teach this teaching sincerely and correctly. Unless you really are sure you know more than them, you really ought to just keep your mouth shut, frankly, because to commit slander is to do something that creates a karmic influence that could be avoided if you would just not have the hubris to think you know more than the other person automatically because your opinion's just as capable as theirs. Okay? If their opinion is formed over the course of many things with many others that they've learned from, it's not just their opinion. I'm expressing right now many things that have been taught to me. I didn't just dream up on my own. Okay, one of those is that's what I wanted to point out from the text of the Gosho that's not really mentioned in the lecture. On page 963 of this Gosho, on page 963 of Persecution by Sword and Staff, he's going into this whole circumstance of how the views, however, are as useless now to us now as last year's calendar or yesterday's meal. And he goes further down as he explains the Devadatta chapter of the Lotus Sutra, states that the Devadatta was the teacher of the thus come one in some existence. Then he goes into state, this is where it's left off. He who is once teacher is now the disciple. He who is now the disciple is formerly teacher. In pondering this chapter, and as I explained to you that he has written this from the perspective of his own enlightenment, right? So now he's saying, I, Nichiren, perceive this to mean this. Okay? That's what he's qualifying. This is the Buddhism of sowing being expressed by him specifically. Okay? He says, I, Nichiren, have realized that it reveals the profound meaning of the Lotus Sutra through the oneness of past and present. What is the oneness of past and present? I don't think I mentioned it last time we were together. Why does he say the oneness of... What is the truth of the oneness of past and present?
So we are the same as a teacher.
Huh?
As we are
No. It's really about the circumstance of time. Okay? Past is always connected to present. Why? The law of cause and effect, karma.
Yeah, karma.
Okay, there's nothing in the present that isn't rooted in the past.
Right.
Okay? Now, based on the simultaneity of cause and effect, though, that present doesn't have to reflect the past specifically as it relates to a causal circumstance. You can change anything in a moment, right? Okay, so, and the inseparability of the one who teaches and the one who learns. Now, we know he was talking about discussing the relationship between Devadatta, who was a Sita in a previous life, was a teacher of Shakyamuni and Shakyamuni. Okay, but what is that really then saying again? I, Nichiren, have realized that it reveals the profound meaning of the Lotus Sutra through the oneness of the past and present and the inseparability of the one who teaches and the one who learns.
Mentor and disciple. Mentor and disciple.
Sorry.
Mentor and disciple. Who
Exactly,
teach and who
it's
learn.
exactly what it is. It's mentor and disciple, and it's describing the reality that this oneness of teacher and disciple is for the sake of the disciple becoming a teacher.
Right.
The sentence that precedes it actually reflects the reality that occurs when that is the case. Okay? That was the point I wanted to make before I go into the lecture again. Now, starting on, we had already read the preamble of the lecture last week with President Ikeda talking about his experience with Mr. Toda and Mr. Toda's difficulties and those sorts of things. So we start today on page 5 of volume 5 of the Teachings for Victory by Daisaku Ikeda. It's middle of page 5 in the first column. It says the increasingly tense situation in Asahara. And everybody knows what he's talking about there, right? From the Gosho, if nothing else. I don't know why I'm getting congested. Give me a minute. Do you know why?
Because 你跟小朋友一样，
What?
因为一个看圣经，一个看
No, you clean up your throat and then comes George. It's like chain reaction.
like
No, I was saying,
Ah,
because George already knows all the answers to all my questions. That's why I was saying. An increasingly tense situation in Atsuhara. What is that specifically referring to? This is the time after he's come back from Sato Island, when he's up in Mount Minobu, okay? But Nikko Shonin is in Awa Prefecture doing shakabuku around in the Atsuhara district, right?
okay.
Okay, so the increasingly tense situation is in Atsuhara is the persecution of Nichiren's disciples for being Nichiren's disciples. Do you understand? The opposition of what Nikko is trying to accomplish there. Because he's kind of supervising this from his dwelling in the dense forest in the mountains of Minobu, right? Okay, so if we've already read this letter, what do you think would be the circumstance of, what would be the motivation for Nichiren to write this kind of a letter to Nanjo Tokimitsu? Do we know how old? Do you guys remember this? This Gosho is going to. We've already talked about it, I think. How old's Nanjo Tokimitsu when he gets this? He's like 20 years old. Okay, as a 20-year-old, he's the head of the household, but he's still a young man.
Yeah.
He hasn't had a lot of experiences in life, and Nichiren is almost like a fatherly kind of person to him. He's known, you know, his dad was disciple of Nichiren, his mom's a disciple of Nichiren. This a family kind of a thing. So the increasingly tense situation in Atsuhara is this persecution. So why would he be writing this to Nanjo Tokimitsu? It's to explain to him why the shit's going down in Atsuhara, because that's where Nanjo's from. His family's taken a big hit. All of the people that he has encouraged to chant are taking a big hit. So the purpose of this letter is for the Daishonin to reveal more clearly to him the Daishonin's basis of what his conviction, his mission, and reality of his identity is, and also tell Nanjo Tokimitsu, believe in my teaching. Now, frankly, my teaching is dogma. Yes? Yes, it absolutely is. It believe, have faith, believe, have faith, believe, have faith. Most of the things he's discussing and teaching as a believer, as a teacher, are about the correct understanding. Okay, and that correct understanding is inclusive of the reality of the fact that there are certain things that are unchangeable truths. That's why you have a mentor. I mean, if it was just never the same, everybody's completely different. The process is always unique. You know, mentors wouldn't be as important as they are because you actually need an explanation put in front of you that your mind can conform to in this process of becoming one mind with Nichiren, right? So the Daishonin is explaining to him why everything's going on and why it's even going on with me. I might be in Minobu, but don't forget what I've already been through, is what he's saying, okay? So he qualifies to the young Nanjo Tokimitsu, the greatest of all persecutions, this is from the Gosho again, middle of page 5, first column. The greatest of all the persecutions that I have suffered were the attempted beheading at Tatsunokuchi and the attack at Tojo. None of the others were direct attempts on my life. I have been reviled, denounced, ousted, falsely accused, and struck across the face. But these were all comparatively minor incidences. I, Nichiren, am the only person in Japan to be abused in both body and mind on account of the Lotus Sutra. If anyone else has been slandered as I have, it was not because of the Lotus Sutra. One incident in particular I can never forget is how Shobo seized the 5th scroll of the Lotus Sutra and struck me across the face with it. His attack on me stemmed from the 3 poisons. Continuing at the bottom of page 5, first column. Nichiren Daishonin composed Persecution by sword and staff while in residence on Mount Minobu. It is addressed to the 20-year-old Nanjo Tokimitsu, the steward of Ueno village in Fuji district, Suruga province, and is dated April 20th, 1279. When this was just around the time when the Atsuhara persecution began to intensify in earnest. Through the vigorous propagation of the Daishonin's teachings in Suruga, under the leadership of the Daishonin's disciple and later successor Nikko Shonin, the number of people embracing faith in the Lotus Sutra was on the rise. They included priests of influential temples in the area, such as Ryuzenji and many local Atsuhara farmers. The Fuji area was home to many fiefs belonging to members of the ruling Hojo clan, the majority of whom were adherents to the established Buddhist schools of the day. So Fuji could be described as being right in the heart of forces hostile to Nichiren, forces alarmed by the rapid spread of his teachings. It was against this backdrop, then, that one of the Daishonin's followers, Shiro, was attacked and wounded during the time of religious rites. He was knifed at a temple by a priest of an opposing school. If you go to that Gosho in volume 2, that's what it will explain. At a local Shinto shrine. Though the details of the incident are known, clearly Shiro was targeted for being a practitioner of the Daishonen's teachings. It is probably because the Daishonin had received news of the increasingly tense situation in Atsuhara that from the outset of this letter he discusses the various persecutions he has undergone. So he's saying to Nanjo Tokimitsu, yeah, I know a bunch of people are going through a bunch of stuff. I've also been through the same kind of stuff, and we're all going through it for the same reason. Don't lose faith. Don't view this as something that is showing a lack of protection. Understand, it's your job to live through this, to fight through it, and to win. He says, among the many persecutions he experienced, he cites two in which direct attempts were made on his life. One was the Tatsunokuchi Persecution on September 12, 1271, in which Heino Seimin sent a large force of soldiers to apprehend him and then behead him at Tatsunokuchi. The other was the Kamatsubara Persecution, an attack made on November 11, 1264, in which a party of armed men under the direction of the local steward Tojo Tagenobu set upon the Daishonin and a small group traveling with him at Matsubara, now commonly known as Kamatsubara, in Tojo, Awa province. Okay, the same area. So this Tojo Kagenobu is over. Again, this is where Seikoji Temple is. Seichoji Temple is, the one that he went to as a kid, right? He says they killed during this attack with Tojo Kagenobu and his men came and attacked the Daishonin as he was going to this disciple's home. He says they killed one of the Daishonin's followers, actually the guy who he was going to visit, and broke the Daishonin's arm and delivered a sword cut to his forehead. But he escaped. Everybody knows that, the Kamatsubara persecution, right? Right? Both of these were violent attacks, because don't forget, they did have a whole troop of guys with swords ready to kill him if he tried to get away when they were leading him into Tatsunokuchi. It wasn't like if you want to go, you can. If you don't, that's fine. It was through force. Both of these were violent attacks with swords, and Nichiren's accounts must have made a strong impression on Tokimitsu now that a similar incident had taken place in his area involving Shiro. Until this point, the Daishonin had explained to Tokimitsu on several occasions that, in light of the teachings of the Lotus Sutra, it is clear that practitioners of the sutra will be persecuted. So, if we run into a little dust-up shit in our daily lives as we're continuing to move forward as bodhisattvas of the earth, we're to anticipate that these circumstances will come about and not be swayed by them or affected by them or anything by them. All right? We're not to change our behavior as a result of them. We're not to back down or go backwards or lose faith. Tokimitsu had personal experience of overcoming pressure and criticism for his faith. But this time there was a chance that his very life was in danger. Amid growing anxiety among his followers, the Daishonin explains the significance of the persecutions he has undergone and urges Tokimitsu to be prepared to overcome such obstacles in the same way he has. So he's writing this to Nanjo Tokimitsu. If he was alive today and you had a problem and you knew him, he'd be writing to you in exactly the same way. And we're supposed to take the same responsibility toward propagation when we see people that are going through trials and tribulations. That's why we have personal relationships. There are certain things we don't want to say on camera and tell the whole world that we've gone through, that we've experienced. When other people are suffering, though, those things that are common with their experience, we usually will intimate, even if we don't even know them that well. We'll use our own experience as a basis to validate exactly what's being said here and the behavior that's being expressed. Okay? So he says, the Daishonin says that compared to the two major life-threatening persecutions he has encountered, all the others being reviled, denounced, ousted, falsely accused, and struck across the face, were comparatively minor because they didn't threaten his life. In other words, they were not worthy of serious concern. And in all of Japan, he asserts, he might say, those are devilish functions. This other stuff is, three powerful enemies. He says, and in all of Japan, he asserts, he and he alone has been abused in both body and mind on account of the Lotus Sutra. How inspired and encouraged Tokimitsu must have felt on reading these words filled with the invincible resolve and fighting spirit of one who has weathered and triumphed over repeated onslaughts for the sake of the correct teaching of Buddhism. Okay? And frankly speaking, when we talk about this, put it in a perspective of now. I mean, when we talk about or read about President Toda or President Makaguchi, did they not have life-threatening difficulties that they had to overcome? This whole thing starts with him talking about President Toda talking about President Makaguchi getting fired from 4 different schools for trying to get the teachers together, right? We already know President Toda ended up going to prison, lost his business as well, had to pull back. So the absence of problems is not the determinant in any way, shape, or form of winning or losing in this Buddhism. Winning or losing in this Buddhism has to do with never giving up to the last moment of your life and making progress all the way there. And in that process, revealing your innate Buddhahood, and in that process, teaching others how to bring forth theirs. Okay? So he says, in all of Japan, he asserts, he and he alone has been abused in both body and mind on account of Lotus Sutra. How inspired and encouraged Tokimitsu must have felt reading these words filled with the invincible resolve and fighting spirit of one who has weathered and triumphed over repeated onslaughts for the sake of the correct teaching of Buddhism. That will make you sound a little dogmatic occasionally. Now, we go on to middle of page 6. A reverse relationship with the Lotus Sutra, which is the coolest part about this whole philosophy, to me. Nichiren then recounts an event he says he would never forget. When armed soldiers forced their way into his dwelling at Matsubagayatsu in Kamakura to apprehend him at the time of the Tatsunokuchi persecution, one of Heino Seima's underlings, Shobo, approached him, grabbed the 5th scroll of the Lotus Sutra, which was in his robe, tucked in his robe, which the Daishonin had tucked inside his robe, and struck him across the face with it 3 times. The Daishonin interpreted this act as being attacked with staves as predicted in the Lotus Sutra. He then goes on to explain the principle of gaining benefit through forming a reverse relationship with the Lotus Sutra. To illustrate his point, he cites an Indian anecdote of a jealous woman. He then refers to Shobo, who struck him with the 5th scroll of the Lotus Sutra because Shobo hated both the Lotus Sutra and me, Nichiren. From page 962 of the Gosho. He says, although Shobo's actions mean that he cannot avoid falling into hell, the Daishonin says, through the benefits of forming a reverse relationship with the Lotus Sutra, Shobo will eventually attain Buddhahood just as the 4 kinds of believers who arrogantly persecuted Bodhisattva never disparaging. Okay? So would the cause for Shobo to have this effect that would ultimately progress and manifest as Buddhahood, did that come from an initial position of faith or of acceptance? No, it comes from just contact. It just comes from association. It comes from hearing the name and the words of the truth. Okay? In our case, it's telling other people about Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. At this point in time, it would have been following Nietzsche and his teachings because they haven't even been fully defined yet. All right? People aren't reading the orally transmitted teachings. These goshos aren't being passed around to people. There are no great mentors that are already so in tune that they're able to preach the law and have an actual result to manifest. I mean, the one thing you can say about Daisaku Ikeda, he did take this from being a group of people in Japan and make it a worldwide phenomenon with deep pockets, fully capable of garnering the respect and gaining influence in the world for the sake of us being able to go where we got to go. All right? So he says, although, top of page 7, again, although Shobo's actions mean that he cannot avoid falling into hell, because slander is slander, the Daishonin says through the benefit of forming a reverse relationship with the Lotus Sutra, which now turn that slander into Buddhahood, right? Shobo will eventually attain Buddhahood, just like the 4 kinds of believers who arrogantly persecuted Bodhisattva never disparaging did, as it's described in the Lotus Sutra, as we've read. All right? In the Lotus Sutra, and this is for those that haven't read the Lotus Sutra, he's not going to explain. In the Lotus Sutra, the arrogant people who attacked Bodhisattva never disparaging fell into the hell of incessant suffering for countless eons. But after expiating their offense of slandering the law, they were able to meet Bodhisattva never disparaging again, and to be led to enlightenment by him. In other words, as teachers and students, so to speak, right? This is in accord with the law of cause and effect that governs life across the 3 existences of past, present, and future. In the same way, the Daishonin says Shobo will meet him, the Daishonin, again, take faith in the Lotus Sutra and attain Buddhahood. All right? So whenever you get slandered, smile to yourself and know you just shakabuku somebody else. You just brought them closer to the attainment of Buddhahood in their present form. He says, this statement also expresses the Daishonin's own conviction that he himself, like Bodhisattva never disparaging, is certain to attain Buddhahood. Teaching a young disciple the essence of faith. Page 7, bottom, first paragraph, first column. The 5th scroll contains the very heart of the Lotus Sutra, for it reveals that the Dragon King's daughter attained Buddhahood in her present form. Devadatta represents the spiritual aspect of enlightenment, and the Dragon King's daughter, the physical aspect. The principle of attaining Buddhahood in one's present form can be found nowhere else in the entire lifetime. The principle of attaining Buddhahood in one's present form can be found nowhere else in the Buddha's entire lifetime of teaching. Okay? Why does he say that? Because it only occurs once in the Lotus Sutra, and it only occurs in the Devadatta chapter. He doesn't go on and show other people attaining Buddhahood in their present form and whirling and doing weird shit anywhere else in the other many chapters that go after that. He goes, therefore, because he says, so this is the only place in all of Shakyamuni's teachings where this was evidenced. Okay? Therefore, continues, they've obviously skip to a space here. Therefore, the merciful, thus come one Shakyamuni became the teacher of the wicked Devadatta, and the wise Manjushri became the teacher of the ignorant daughter of the Dragon King. Certainly, I can in no way be inferior to Manjushri, or the thus come one Shakyamuni. And as I said when I read the Gosho, that means you aren't either. Okay, those of you that are of the same mind as Nichiren, those of you that live your lives as bodhisattvas of the earth. He says, the men of Japan are like Devadatta, and the women are like the Dragon King's daughter. Whether by following it or opposing it, they will attain Buddhahood through the Lotus Sutra. This is the message of the Devadatta chapter. In this section, nobody's left out. I mean, nobody's left out. Think of all the other religions in the world. There's always certain ones that are left out as their punishment. Okay? Lotus, that's not our philosophy. That's not the Buddhism of sowing. In this section, on the second column, page 7, in this section, the Daishonin stresses that of the 8 scrolls of the Lotus Sutra, the 5th scroll, the one with which Shobo struck him, has special significance. It contains the 4 chapters from Devadatta to emerging from the earth. The 5th scroll indeed contains a mysterious passage of prediction that presents the crucial elements involved in propagating the Lotus Sutra in the latter day. Let me read it again, because that's almost could slip right by you what he just said there. It contains the 4 chapters from Devadatta to emerging from the earth. The 5th scroll, indeed, contains a mysterious passage of prediction which is what that I shown, and that's why it's parenthetically enclosed there, that presents the crucial elements involved in propagating the Lotus Sutra in the latter day. So then what are we talking about? We're talking about propagating Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, right? In the latter day. Okay? Because we don't propagate the Lotus Sutra, we propagate Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, which is the Lotus Sutra in the latter day. These elements include the actual proof of attaining Buddhahood in one's present form. Okay? That's one. The great persecutions that will be encountered when attempting to spread the sutra, and the emergence of the bodhisattvas of the earth. Now, all of these were evidenced by whom? I'm not going to say me. These elements include the actual proof of attaining Buddhahood in one's present form. Who do you know that did that? The great persecutions that will be encountered when attempting to spread the sutra. Who do you know that did that?
Nichiren?
No, we already know Nichiren did because he's already qualified this stuff.
But
what, okay, who am I talking about?
Bodhisattva.
No. Yes, but more specifically, which Bodhisattva? Huh? The first three presidents of the Soka Gakkai. Okay, that's why I can't say I can't say all of this. Okay, I can say most of it. I can say the part that's in my heart that isn't reality. But I have not been thrown in prison. Okay, I haven't been. Nobody's threatened my life. Nobody's. In fact, I cut them off before they can find out who I am. Okay, but again, these elements. So go back to what President Ikeda is saying in this paragraph. It says it contains the 4 chapters of Devadatta to emerging there. The 5th scroll indeed contains a mysterious passage of prediction, because it actually does predict what's going to happen now, what is happening now. All right, that the teaching, the Buddhism of sowing, is going to be propagated throughout Japadvipa. Don't forget, when he's saying all this stuff in the 12th century Japan, he doesn't have, he doesn't even have a house. Okay, he's got no temple. His followers, many of them are going back and backsliding and quitting the minute that they have to face the shit that's involved in following Nietzsche and becoming a disciple of Nietzsche. They don't want any part of what that involves. Okay, so he's talking about now. The 5th scroll indeed contains a mysterious passage of prediction that presents the crucial elements involved in propagating the Lotus Sutra in the latter day. Okay? These elements include the actual proof of attaining Buddhahood in one's present form. Each of the first 3 presidents have done that, trust me. The great persecutions that will be encountered when attempting to spread the sutra, as we've seen all 3 of those individuals go through. Okay? And persevere and become victorious over. This is the key. If they had just been shit on and nothing had ever been resolved, no dynamic of actual proof had been able to become evident, it wouldn't have the same effect that it does now. As I read it now, I'm going, okay. And the emergence of the bodhisattvas of the earth. I helped accomplish that part. All of us have helped accomplish that part. We are the bodhisattvas that emerge from the earth. Okay? So he says, Nichiren, top of page 8. Nichiren indicates that encountering persecution as a result of propagating the Lotus Sutra means that one is reading the 5th scroll of the Lotus Sutra with one's life and is on the path to attaining Buddhahood. So somebody give you shit, or say you're being so dogmatic, or you whatever, oh, thank you so much, you just assured me of my own Buddhahood. Okay, I don't mind that, but I have to tell you, you're committing slander. Don't do it. All right? He thus underscores the importance of committing oneself to the Lotus Sutra and having faith in its teachings. Okay? He thus underscores the importance of committing oneself to the Lotus Sutra and having faith in its teachings. That's dogma and being dogmatic. Okay? So if you have an allergic reaction to those 2 words, you're going to have trouble practicing this Buddhism. All right? Committing oneself to the Lotus Sutra. That means establishing that as the core purpose of your life. All right? And having faith in its teachings. That means never giving up. Constantly knowing that victory is always there. That's why we get benefits, to give us a foundation of actual experience to help have that confidence to continue in those circumstances. He says, committing oneself to the Lotus Sutra and having faith in his teachings, and of spreading Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. So we can't just do this to be a guru or a cool guy. Person, excuse me, not guy. You know, we've got to do it for the sake of the law. We've got to be doing it for the sake of Kosen Rufu. If that's your mindset, you're living a very dogmatic perspective of this teaching. All right, do you understand what I'm saying? So when somebody says I'm dogmatic, yeah, I'm dogmatic as a son of a bitch. I don't mind that. Why aren't you? Okay? Where did you read anywhere where you didn't have to be? Where have you ever seen anybody trivialize Nam-myoho Renge-kyo to the point of 4 letters? I mean, a lot of people do it for casualness out of ignorance. But you don't abbreviate.
Young people.
Yeah, you don't abbreviate the
It's not the
Daimoku.
same word.
Daimoku is as much as we abbreviate Nam-myoho Renge-kyo.
Maybe you can say you are old and we are young. We think
Exactly,
young
but that's
people.
why an old person is saying to the young people listening, be careful about creating slander and making causes that you think you know what you don't know.
Yes.
And when you find a dogmatic old son of a bitch like me, you might want to listen rather than take issue. Why is he fussing up so much? Because frankly, if you read enough Gosho, you'll find people saying that to Nichiren all the time. Why do you have to be so hard-ass about this? Why can't you just be? And he says every time, because if I don't do it the way I'm doing it, I'm not doing it right. And if I'm not doing it right, I'm committing slander. Especially if I know better. Especially if I'm not standing up for the true teaching, which is the true teaching is it requires mugiwashi. What is mugiwashi?
Doubt-free faith.
Doubt-free faith is as dogmatic as you can get. Okay? So don't complain about dogma to me, anybody, ever again. My middle name is Dogma. Let's establish that. Okay? So, we can sense the Daishonin's wish to teach Tokimitsu the essence of faith so that the latter will be able to overcome inevitable great persecutions, fulfill his mission as a bodhisattva of the earth, and follow the path of shared struggle of mentor and disciple throughout past, present, and future. Now, what did the Daisaku Ikeda just say in the middle of page 8 that I just read to you? He says, we can sense the Daishonin's wish to teach Tokimitsu, but who's writing this and who is reading it? Daisaku Ikeda is writing it, and we're reading it. And why is he writing it? We can sense that President Ikeda wishes to teach us the essence of faith, the dogma necessary to correctly practice to the end of our life, so that the latter, okay, will be able, so that we will be able to overcome the inevitable great persecutions that will befall us if we're going to pull off being the Buddha, okay? And we will be able to fulfill as such then our mission as bodhisattvas of the earth and follow the path of shared struggle of mentor and disciple. Now, am I sharing that struggle with just Daisaku Ikeda and the guys from the Soka Gakkai? No, the original teacher also experienced that struggle. I have a struggle I share with Nichiren Daishonin. That's the struggle he's referring to here. All the struggles that we all experience in the process of sustaining faith are all sharing the struggle of Nichiren. Not the person that taught us that there's a struggle if you want to attain Buddhahood. It's not their fault that that's the reality. Right? Okay? And it's not even Nichiren's fault. Because it's all stated in the Lotus Sutra. If we don't have this kind of experience, we're not validating the teaching that says we can make the jump to Nam-myoho Renge-kyo in the 5th 500-year period. Do you understand how this all ties together? It all ties together. In the middle of page 8, everybody's with me, right?
Yeah.
I'm not being too over the top, right? Okay. Living up to the trust that the Daishonin placed in him, Tokimitsu protected his fellow believers during the Atsuhara persecution and upheld the banner of the correct teaching of Buddhism and lost his ass in the process. They stripped him down of a lot of his possessions. He took a big hit. This wasn't just like a rich guy saying, here, I'll share some of my money with you. No. Okay? They cut him off from the source of his income. For those dedicated efforts, the Daishonin later praised his youthful disciple as Ueno the Worthy. sages and worthies are always tested by abuse, right? So he's putting him right up there with a sage. Nichiren's words express his boundless hope for Tokimitsu and offer training and instruction. They reveal his desire to teach the young man what true faith means and to explain to him the value of a life dedicated to realizing the great vow of Kosen-rufu by following the path of mentor and disciple. What did Daisaku Ikeda just say in that paragraph? There can be confusion about what true faith is versus what you may think faith is. Okay, that's why you have the mentor-disciple relationship as well. Okay, so this is all out of compassion, all right, because that's where the wisdom came from to speak up in the first place. Kosen-rufu pulses vibrantly in the mentor-disciple relationship, especially when youthful disciples seek to respond to the hopes and training of their mentor without their own commitment, with their own commitment and dedicated efforts. Okay? So, what's that say? To me, that's Tama and Mr. Matsuoka and Mr. Osaki. All right? Kosen-rufu pulses vibrantly in the mentor-disciple bond. I would not be able to speak to any of you had those two guys not talked to me the way they did. They talked to me. It wasn't me hearing Daisaku Ikeda say anything. Okay? It was those two guys. They were so real. They weren't off in a far place. They weren't addressing thousands of people at a time. They were just talking to Tom. Okay? So, Kosen-rufu pulses vibrantly in the mentor-disciple relationship, especially when youthful disciples seek to respond to the hopes and training of their mentor with their own commitment and dedicated efforts. That's exactly what I'm doing. In the second column of page 8, the significance of the Devadatta chapter. The Devadatta chapter contains two extremely important teachings. One, the teaching, the Dragon King's daughter, attainment of Buddhahood in her present form, and two, the attainment of Buddhahood by the wicked and perverse Devadatta, which corresponds to the enlightenment of evil people. Pardon me. Devadatta epitomizes someone with an evil and malicious mind, one who has committed the most abhorrent and treacherous deeds. He is said to have fallen into the hell of incessant suffering while still alive. In the Lotus Sutra, however, it is predicted that in a future existence he will attain enlightenment as a Buddha named Heavenly King. In this letter, the Daishonin refers to Devadatta's attainment of Buddhahood as the spiritual aspect of enlightenment. The Dragon King's daughter is both female, which in the pre-Lotus Sutra teachings disqualifies her from attaining Buddhahood, and an animal, since she is a dragon. Because she attains Buddhahood, but even though she's an animal and she's a dragon, what is she? She's a living being. She's a living being. Okay, she was there at the ceremony. It must be she's a pretty high-ranking living being. Okay, frankly. So being an animal has nothing to do with it. An animal, since she is a dragon, because she attains Buddhahood just as she is, without having to change anything about herself. The Daishonin says she represents the physical aspect of enlightenment. We too can attain Buddhahood without changing anything else about ourselves. Okay? Don't even have to become human. Okay? All right. The principle of the spiritual aspect of enlightenment and the physical aspect of enlightenment explain that no matter what difficulties and challenges we may face from the perspective of the most fundamental level of life, that means no matter what, we have the right and the underlying power to attain the highest possible state of happiness, which means bringing forth Buddhahood from our life. All right? The Daishonin continues by writing that only the Lotus Sutra teaches the principle of attaining Buddhahood in one's present form. That's why none of the other schools think that you can be Buddhas like we are, because none of their teachings say that we can be what we are. He says he thus refutes the error of the True Word school, which maintains that this teaching is found in the provisional pre-Lotus Sutra scriptures it upholds. The Daishonin declares that it is that it is as easy to refute these assertions as it is to smash 1,000 earthen cooking dishes with a single hammer. Here, 1,000 earthen cooking dishes symbolizes the attainment of Buddhahood taught in the sutras expounded prior to the Lotus Sutra. A single hammer symbolizes the attainment of Buddhahood in one's present form taught in the Lotus Sutra. This principle represents the one and only truth capable of refuting all provisional teachings which were expounded by the Buddha as mere expedient means. This is why the Daishonin asserts, citing Tentai's profound meaning of the Lotus Sutra, that the Lotus Sutra is the teaching of Shakabuku, the refutation of the provisional doctrines. Wow, I love that paragraph. What did that just say? This principle represents the one and only truth.
Yeah.
What is the one and only truth capable of refuting all the provisional teachings which were expounded by the Buddha as mere expedient means? Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, okay? And that's why we don't give a shit. We smash those earthen pots. We open the door. We let them hear the name and the words of the truth. We don't worry about how they feel about it. Of course, we want them to feel positive. We're not trying to go piss people off and just go, hey, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, flip through the bird. Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. No, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is no matter how they react, we needn't ever be, oh, I wasn't able to shakabuku them. Okay? Because you did. You did. You already did. They will attain Buddhahood just by virtue of what you've done. If they had responded positively, it means that they were already along the path. You probably already did this once or twice with them. Mm-hmm. They are part of your crew. Mm-hmm. All right? So he says, this is why the Daishonin asserts, citing that the Lotus Sutra is the teaching of Shakabuku, because we refute those errors in understanding. And we stand by fearlessly with the conviction that our understanding is correct. We believe in the dogma of Nichiren. Mm-hmm. Okay? I love the word dog. The teaching goes on, the Daishonin goes on to write, the merciful thus come one Shakyamuni became the teacher of the wicked Devadatta, and the wise Manjushri became the teacher of the ignorant daughter of the Dragon King. Certainly, I can in no way be inferior to Manjushraya or to the thus come one Shakyamuni. His inference here is that to those who are ignorant of or hostile to the sutra and its correct understanding, by the way, he is just like the wise Manjushraya or the merciful Shakyamuni, because he has persevered through all hardships to propagate the Lotus Sutra, the teaching of universal enlightenment. What does universal enlightenment mean? Everybody's already the Buddha exactly as they are. They have that potential. They don't have to gain that potential. It's already a part of their life. Nichiren is thus enabling even those who oppose or fail to appreciate the correct teaching to make a connection with it, He writes, whether by following it or opposing it, they will attain Buddhahood through the Lotus Sutra. Herein lies the greatness of the Lotus Sutra and Nichiren Buddhism. Continuing, page 9. Back to the changing conflict and division into cooperation and harmony. Whew. Who's going to pull that off? The one additional important point concerning attaining enlightenment through a reverse relationship is that the Lotus Sutra does not view those who oppose it as doing so because of some fixed, unchanging nature. Okay, so what does that say? What's that explaining?
They are just ignorant.
They're just ignorant. They're not evil people.
Yeah.
Evil and enlightenment are the same. They're two sides to the same coin. Buddhas have the same nature. It just doesn't manifest itself. The deluded side comes out in common mortals. The enlightened side comes out in enlightened entities. Okay, so he does not view those who oppose it as doing so because of some fixed, unchanging nature. Now, the reason I bring that is like, if you did this in Christianity, no, you're going to go to hell.
Yeah,
Okay?
I was reminded.
Right, okay. Rather, that's what I'm saying. Rather, it comes down to a person's behavior. And their behavior is determined moment by moment by moment by moment. It's not a fixed moment is their behavior. It's this moment is their behavior. So at no moment are they ever deprived of the simultaneity of cause and effect, suddenly making everything different. All right? He says, a reverse relationship is that of the Lotus Sutra does not view those who oppose it as doing so because of some fixed, unchanging nature. Rather, it comes down to a person's behavior. Do they believe in or slander the mystic law? Slander shows in the behavior of those who oppose the correct teaching, but such behavior can be changed. Reviewing the course of human history, we can see how people have always divided others into allies who will support them on the one hand and enemies who must be destroyed on the other. World's filled with that kind of perspective right now. This grim process, right, dear?
Yeah.
This grim process of conflict and division has continued unabated. Okay, so it didn't just start now. It's human nature. Even today, in the 21st century, the tragedy of ethnic and political conflicts, or philosophical conflicts, or informational conflicts, sometimes conducted under the banner of religion, sadly endures. And sometimes conducted under the banner of religion is how a lot of what you and I are euphemizing, whatever that word is, laughing at each other about, okay? Again, bottom of page 9, second column. Once human beings have fixed ideas, they easily become prisoners to them. That's why, top of page 10, it's so important for us to break through the walls in our hearts and return to our shared common ground as human beings, as people who share life on this planet. Through sincere actions and dialogue that promotes mutual understanding, we must together reaffirm the ideal of building a peaceful and happy society. Very tough. Humanity. Humanity can attain harmony and prosperity only by pursuing this path of coexistence and cooperation, which, while it recognizes and affirms cultural diversity, is based on the universal and eternal values of human dignity and respect for life. So let me read that paragraph again, because you got a couple of very important little caveats. Humanity can attain harmony and prosperity only. Humanity, so what is that? Mankind, the whole world, not just one country or one region of earth, all right? Humanity can attain harmony. That means we're all getting along, everybody, everywhere. And prosperity, they're all living the life that's promised for what? What is harmony and prosperity a prediction of?
Happiness?
Kosen Rufu.
Yeah, Kosen Rufu.
Kosen Rufu. So Kosen Rufu can only be attained, is what he's really talking about. Humanity can attain harmony and prosperity, Kosen Rufu, only by pursuing this path of coexistence and cooperation, which, while it recognizes and affirms cultural diversity, so while it recognizes you think something differently than I do, okay, and you come from a different place than I do, and you may have habits and perceptions that are different than mine, right? My real view of you is not that. It's based on the universal and eternal values of human dignity and respect for life. Just you being you, no matter what you is enough for me to not be all on edge and hate you. Or despise you or whatever. That's what that's saying. The key to this transformation, because it would take most people to transform their minds before they could actually function that way in society and around others. Okay? The key to this transformation is wisdom and compassion, as highlighted in this letter. So what kind of compassion is he highlighting in this letter? And what kind of wisdom is he discussing as highlighted in this letter? Wisdom and compassion. Okay, which comes first, wisdom or compassion?
Compassion.
Compassion, right? So what has he shown compassion for in this letter?
To the slenders.
Shobo, you poor son bitch, you hit me in the face 3 times with a fifth scroll. Lucky freaking you. Okay, you're going to go to hell, but boy, you're tied to somebody very cool. Alright? So, the key to this transformation, okay, you understand what I'm saying, right? Alright, so the
key
but-
to
actually,
the
where was I?
Lotus Sutra teaches both the principle.
Principle of, okay, that's where I'm going on to. But where was it? Where was
The
I?
key to this transformation
Okay,
is
is wisdom and compassion. Okay, sorry, that's what I've got
Yeah.
hung up on. Is highlighted in this letter. So, wisdom is also, what's he relating it to?
Compassion.
Yeah, but I'm saying, where he's shown wisdom, we've already discussed where he's shown wisdom, right? Or compassion, by Shobo, but where has he shown wisdom?
Faith.
Yeah, to perceive that the actions of Shobo are really what's reflective of him and not reflective of Shobo. Do you understand? In other words, he has the wisdom to understand that everything he experiences is because of what he's endeavoring to do and what he's done. It's his karma. Okay? It's not terrible Shobo who's going to have his hands not go into hell. That kind of weird shit. Okay? The idea is that, again, compassion, when we stop hating people because of who we think they are and look at them with this eternal value and universal value of the fact that they're just human beings and as such they have Buddha nature and that should be enough. Okay? All right, so the key to this transformation is wisdom and compassion is highlighted in this letter. The Lotus Sutra teaches both the principle and actual proof of universal enlightenment in the most dramatic manner. It does so by revealing that the treacherous Devadatta who attacked and persecuted Shakyamuni was actually Shakyamuni's teacher in a past life. Moreover, he will attain enlightenment in a future existence. Okay, so no eternal hell for Devadatta. It also shows the 8-year-old Dragon King's daughter attaining enlightenment instantly in her present form. The essence of the Lotus Sutra, I believe, is to be found in this kind of dynamic transformation of values. It can happen, seriously. It's a moment, a single moment of life, and nothing's ever the same again after that. It's very strange. Each of you have to experience it. You will experience it. Top of page 10, second column. Encountering persecution by sword. There's only 2 more pages, bro. Next we come to the encouraging devotion chapter. This is from the Gosho. Only I, Nichiren, have read with my entire being the 20-line verse from this chapter, which is the 800,000 million Nayutas of Bodhisattvas proclaimed in a single voice. Since the Buddha's passing, who else in the 3 countries of India, China, and Japan has ever read this verse as I have? So he's saying it's my Buddha nature is what's perceiving this. Okay, this is the Buddhism of sowing. That's what he's qualifying. No one even claims to have done so, nor do I believe that anyone has. The verse reads, there will be many ignorant people who will attack us with swords and staves. Perhaps others have been beaten with staves, but I have never heard of anyone who were injured by the sword. I, Nichiren, have met with persecution by both sword and staff. As I mentioned before, I was attacked with the sword at Matsubara in Tojo and later at Tatsunokuchi No one else has met with such persecution for the sake of the Lotus Sutra, not even once, but I have met with it twice. As for being attacked with staves, I have already been struck in the face by Shobo with the fifth scroll of the Lotus Sutra. The fifth scroll was used as a staff to strike me, and it is this very scroll that carries the passage that the devotees of the Lotus Sutra will be attacked with staves. What a mysterious passage of prediction. This letter's title, Persecution by the Sword and Staff, is inspired by the content of the above section. In the end of the encouraging devotion chapter, a host of 800,000 million Nayutas of Bodhisattvas vows to propagate the Lotus Sutra following Shakyamuni's death, pledging to endure any form of persecution. In the concluding verse section in which they express this resolve, they mention the three powerful enemies: arrogant lay people, arrogant priests, and arrogant false sages, who will invariably appear in order to persecute the votaries of the Lotus Sutra. Who is it that had actually called forth these three powerful enemies and become the target of their attacks? Only by doing so can one claim to have read the sutra with one's life. If there's anyone in the three lands of India, China, or Japan after the Buddha's passing who can confidently assert that they have done so, in response, is there anyone in those three countries that can confidently assert that they've done so? In response to this question, the Daishonin clearly states that he and he alone can claim to have read the Lotus Sutra with his entire being. As proof of having done so, which is a very dogmatic comment to make. As proof of having done so, the Daishonin cites the fact that he has been attacked by swords and staves, which is the sutra's prediction of how arrogant lay people will attack. He points out that even Bodhisattva Never Disparaging, who was persecuted so harshly for his efforts to spread the law, was beset only with sticks of wood or tiles or stones, but not with swords. But he, Nichiren, has met with persecution by both sword and staff. Persecution by sword refers to Kamatsubara and the Tatsunokuchi persecutions, while by staff refers to the incident with the fifth scroll of the Lotus Sutra. In the following passage, the Daishonin describes how he felt at the time when dozens of armed soldiers forced their way into his residence as Shobo struck him. Though I knew it was for the sake of the Lotus Sutra, being an ordinary person, I felt that had I had the strength, I would have wrested it from him, trampled on and broken it and thrown it away. However, it was in fact the fifth scroll of the Lotus Sutra. It is only natural, now President Ikeda is qualifying this for all of us as human beings. It is only natural that one might react with anger to such outrageous treatment. That is how most ordinary people would feel. To cast it in contemporary terms, it is completely natural to react with righteous anger against violations of one's human rights. But wearing the armor of perseverance that Daishonin kept himself under control, acted with self-assurance, and spoke out with dignity for his beliefs. He didn't display even the slightest trace of violence, hatred, or desire for revenge. That's what we should try to emulate, although it will be very normal for that to be a difficult thing to do. The key is you don't want to stop the process of you being the teacher. Okay? You don't really care about their opinion of you, or if they even really fully understand it. It's about keeping on the point. He says, in addition, at the bottom of page 11, in addition, seen from a broader perspective, the hardships that assail us can function to strengthen us and spur our growth as human beings. I know for me personally this is very true. As long as we do not allow ourselves to be defeated by suffering, even the most painful experiences can be turned into something positive. Nothing is ever wasted in Buddhism. So there's a reason why you go through everything you go through. I can tell you after 50 years, only by looking back will you be able to see that. Okay? Mm-hmm. But you'll be able to see that without it being BS. Absolutely, this would have never happened if this had. Oh, and that led to this. Oh, I thought I was having a bad time, but I was having all the things that were necessary for me to do what I wanted to do. The Daishonin, in fact, expressed gratitude for Shobo striking him and for being able to undergo persecution by staff. He writes, when I attain Buddhahood, how will I be able to forget my obligations to Shobo? Much less, how can I forget the thanks that I owe to the scroll of the Lotus Sutra with which he struck me? When I think of this, I cannot restrain my tears of gratitude. In his novel, The Human Revolution, Mr. Toda recounts how his hero, Gan, who represents Mr. Toda, concluded that by being beaten by prison guards 4 times while in prison for his religious beliefs during World War II, he had expiated the offenses he had committed in past existences. The profound teaching of the Lotus Sutra enables us to turn suffering into the driving force for transforming our karma. The practices of the bodhisattvas of the earth. This is from the Gosho. The Emerging from the Earth chapter also explains something about me because it states that Bodhisattva superior practices and his followers will appear in the latter day of the law to propagate the 5 characters of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. I, Nichiren, have appeared earlier than anyone else. How reassuring to think that I will no doubt be praised by bodhisattvas equal in number to the sands of 60,000 Ganges rivers. Be that as it may, commit yourself to the Lotus Sutra and have faith in its teachings. You must not only believe in them yourself, but also encourage others to do the same, so that you may save those who were your parents in all your past existences. From the time that I was born until today, I have never known a moment's ease. I have thought only of propagating the Daimoku of the Lotus Sutra, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. I do not know how long I or anyone else may live, but without fail I will be with you at the time of your death and guide you from this life to the next. Continuing in the middle of page 12. Second column. What is this mission and significance of the wondrous bodhisattvas who suddenly make their appearance in the Emerging from the Earth chapter? This section implies that Nichiren Daishonin, the votary of the Lotus Sutra, is also a bodhisattva of the earth, specifically bodhisattva superior practices, the leader of the throng of bodhisattvas, as numerous as the sands of 60,000 Ganges rivers. He is telling Tokimitsu, as it were, in light of the passage of the sutra passages, your teacher, me, Nichiren, is bodhisattva superior practices who has embarked on the struggle to propagate the law for the sake of those living in the latter day. He is certain to be praised by the vast multitudes of bodhisattvas of the earth. You should feel assured by that. In this section, we also find what could be called the ultimate message of this letter. Commit yourself to the Lotus Sutra and have faith in its teachings. The Daishonin is urging Tokimitsu to follow him, to live and strive alongside him, always advancing together in faith. He also tells Tokimitsu that by remaining steadfast in faith, he, Tokimitsu, will not only be able to attain enlightenment himself, but will be able to lead those who were his parents in all past existences to enlightenment as well. This meant, in other words, that Tokimitsu would be able to help guide to enlightenment all those he encountered in this lifetime. Everybody understands that, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, that's our job. Nichiren also reflects on his life of unending struggle, saying that from the time that I was born until today, I have never known a moment's ease, a sentiment he expresses in several other writings. Because of his faith in Nichiren's teachings, Tokimitsu had been censored and criticized by members of the Nanjo family. But now he had grown into an outstanding individual and become one of the central leaders of the Daishonin's disciples in the Fuji area. In this section, Nichiren shares with Tokimitsu in greater depth the spirit in which he has striven for Kosen Rufu and lived out his life amid unceasing persecution. The bottom of page 13, first column, the eternal journey of mentor and disciple. He writes, I do not know how long I or anyone else may live, but without fail I will be with you at the time of your death and guide you from this life to the next. Now, for me personally, when I read this, I read, okay, that's for me too then, bro, right? Okay, so I've had this conviction from the very beginning of my practice. Mm-hmm. It came from my own mind. Mr. Masaoka didn't tell me that. Mm-hmm. I trust Nichiren. Having already witnessed the increasingly harsh persecution facing Nichiren's followers, Tokimitsu must have been prepared for the possibility of his own death. In fact, 5 months later, some 20 of the Daishonin's believers in Asahara, all farmers, were arrested and sent to Kamakura, where 3 of them were later executed. That's the Asahara persecution. Against this background, the Atsuhara martyrs. The Daishonin says that no matter what happens, he will be watching over Tokimitsu in his struggles. Okay, so this is the important part. Even in death, they will be together, inseparable. Tokimitsu must have been tremendously heartened by the Daishonin's vast compassion. The shared journey of mentor and disciple is indeed eternal, continuing throughout the three existences of past, present, and future, bound together by life-to-life ties that can never be sundered. They will triumph over all through eternity. So, how long we been doing this around this table? Years. Guarantee you we all have this relationship. So when any of us die, don't get too sad about it. We're not rid of each other. I promise you that. Okay? So, continuing on page 13, bottom, second column. A strong seeking spirit and faith is the source of victory. In the postscript of this letter, Nichiren writes, as you crave food when hungry, seek water when thirsty, long to see a lover, beg for medicine when ill, or as a beautiful woman desires powder and rouge, so should you put your faith in the Lotus Sutra. If you do not, you will regret it later. In the verse section of Lifespan chapter, the Lotus Sutra 16th chapter, we find this passage. All harbor thoughts of yearning, and in their minds thirst to gaze at the Buddha. Also extolled here is the virtue of becoming truly faithful, honest, and upright, gentle in intent, single-mindedly desiring to see to the Buddha, not hesitating even if it costs them their lives. It is important that our faith in the Gohonzon and seeking spirit toward the mystic law are strong and unwavering and sincere. Those who wish to transform their karma, who pray for the realization of Kosen Rufu, and who strive for that cause with ungrudging devotion, are guaranteed to advance in life, a life of happiness and victory. Those who sincerely persevere in their Buddhist practice will be victors. They will win out in the end. This is the ultimate purpose of faith in Nichiren Buddhism. Adversity forges us into people of genuine character and cultivates strong will. It allows us to taste life's tears of true joy and sorrow and to achieve a great human revolution. Boy, I wish I had more time to go back over that paragraph, but I know we're over time here. Read that about 5 times. Do you see how many stars there are there? I mean, there's like so much there. The youth of the SGI are the light of hope. On one night in December 1950, a little over a month after Mr. Toda spoke about sharing 4 persecutions alongside his mentor, I made an entry in my diary reflecting on the passage, when great evil occurs, great good follows. I wrote, until the last day I shall fight, brandishing in my heart the sword of the law, and looking forward to the start of a new year filled with victory and honor, I continued. The Soka Gakkai is like the morning sun, now about to rise and dispel the darkness. That hope came to fruition on the sunny May 3rd of that year with the inauguration of Mr. Toda as the second Soka Gakkai president. He had gone from being disgraced to kicking its ass. Today, it is none other than the youth of the SGI, my direct disciples shining with infinite hope, who are the bright sun rising to illuminate the skies of the 21st century. Please join me in working for Kosen Rufu for the victory of a youthful SGI in our grand and eternal shared struggle of mentor and disciple, triumphantly surmounting all adversity. With deep gratitude for your valiant efforts in practice and study, Daisaku Ikeda. Thank you.
Thank you.